is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made these beautiful, delicious, smoky, crunchy, scratch-made, amazing whole hog Crunchwrap Supremes. Coming up. This is a pork shoulder. Pat it dry. And what I got here is a pork picnic roast, which I just said was a shoulder. Comes from the front leg, but it's actually more of the elbow. And you've seen me cook these plenty of times, and that's because this is the only readily available cut around me that has the pork skin still on. But if you're overseas, then you can pretty much get whatever cut you want. But these are nice and cheap. This one's pretty small, so it should cook up pretty quickly. And it's got all that skin on there, which will get nice and crispy and be the crunch part of this whole hog-esque Crunchwrap Supreme. So, not really gonna do any trimming. As always, if you see something kind of weird on there, you can zip that off, but it really doesn't matter because anything that does burn up or get too crispy, you can pull out when we're making pulled pork at the end of the cook. It's also at this time you could season the underside, season this meat up if you feel so inclined, but you know what? Again, we're making pulled pork, so we can add all of our seasoning when we're making our mop sauce and when we're mixing this up. So, I'm not gonna do anything to this except fire up the pit. And on the pit we go. We're going meat side down at first. But before we go ahead and shut down this lid, we're going to do what we always do when we're trying to get some crispy whole hog style pork skin and cover this skin with some salt. We want a nice thick layer of salt. I'm using table salt, but kosher does work just fine. And again, if you're new here, this is not for seasoning purposes, although it will add a nice salty flavor to the skin. But really, it's to protect the skin from getting kind of dark and gummy, while at the same time pulling moisture out of the skin during the cook, so when we flip this over in a few hours, we can get that really nice crackling that we're after. Nice amount of salt, can't go too heavy, and most of the salt will come off. And we may even need to add some more to the meat. So I'm gonna rock this pit pretty hot for the first few hours, right around 300, 325. Keeping an eye on it, making sure nothing's burning up, and we'll check back in a little bit. And while that cooks, let's go ahead and get everything else ready. Started with some bacon fat flour tortillas. Starting moving into our food processor here with some bread flour, some kosher salt, and some baking powder. And get that all blended up. And then our bacon fat. Ooh. And once the shaggy dough is formed, in we go with some warm water while it runs. And just let that knead for a little bit until it stops working entirely. There we go. And just like that, the ball is formed. I got it on a lightly floured work surface here, give it a few extra kneads, just for good measure, make sure nothing is too sticky. And now we're gonna weigh out our tortilla dough balls, starting with the big boys, which are gonna be right around 150 grams. And once all your dough is measured out, we're just gonna tuck all the seams to the bottom, go seam side down, and just give it a nice little table roll. I also made some little guys. That will be our bottom tortilla. And now I'm gonna place all these in this little tortilla warmer just to rest for a good long time while we go ahead and get everything else ready. First things first, we need to make a mop sauce. So into this pot here, I'm gonna go in with some butter and just let that get nice and melty. And once nice and bubbly, we're gonna go in with some of our diced onions and just let those cook away. And once starting to soften up, get a little bit of color, I'm gonna go in with my sliced up lemon, as well as some mustard powder, a nice healthy shot of some snake bite rub. This is my spicy rub. Ooh, yes please. Let those toast down for like a minute or two. And now we're going in with some apple cider vinegar, some white vinegar, shot of some Worcestershire sauce, and some good old Texas Pete. And bring that up to a simmer. And once nice and boiling, we're gonna finish it off with a little beer. Just add some more volume. Oops. Beautiful. We're about 5 hours into this cook. Got some lovely smoke coming out of here. Plenty of that direct heat flavor. So now we're gonna take this big salt blanket off. Look at that, save that for a fun seasoning. And that did its job wonderfully. The skin is looking nice and dry, great color on that. Now we're gonna go ahead and flip this over to get some color on the skin and make sure it gets nice and crispy. Oh yeah, that's looking beautiful. That's exactly what we're looking for. Some really nice roasted color, some really good Maillard reaction, caramelization, whatever you want to call it. And nothing is too burnt up. But on the off chance that any of this is a little hard, that's where the mop sauce comes in. Love it. Add some wonderful steamed flavor, soften up this meat, and of course add some nice vinegary, tangy flavor to the meat. So I'm going to keep mopping this periodically for the next little bit. Keep an eye on the fire, make sure we don't have any flare-ups. And once that skin is nice and crispy and this meat is probed and nice and tender, then we'll pull it off. Next up, quick pico de gallo, starting with our Roma tomatoes, our onion, jalapeno, cilantro, some lime juice, and a big fat pinch of salt. And get that all nice and mixed up. Beautiful. And instead of putting lettuce on this crunch wrap, we're gonna make a coleslaw. So right here I got 1 cup of Duke's mayonnaise, to which I'm gonna add some celery seed, some white sugar, some white vinegar, a little apple cider vinegar, and a pinch of salt. And just get that nice and mixed up. Looking good, be sure to taste and adjust. And now into a bowl, we're gonna go in with some of our nicely, finely cut up cabbage. I've said for a long time that cabbage belongs in a crunch wrap. And in coleslaw form, just makes a lot of sense. And then we'll add some of our dressing. And go ahead and get that all nice and mixed up. That is looking a little too soupy, so we'll just go ahead and add some more cabbage. Beautiful, simple coleslaw. Set that aside and keep it nice and cold. And now that all the prep work is done, let's go ahead and get these tortillas made. Ooh, looking beautiful. Got the old Chud press fired up over here, rocking right about 350 degrees. So all we gotta do now is press them out. Beautiful. And a nice hard press on these 12-inch guys because we want them to be as big and wide as possible. Taco squeal. Ooh, not too bad. First 2 came out kind of weird. I think I burned the seasoning off from cooking the steak too hot. But number 3 is looking absolutely beautiful. Ooh, now that's hot. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Nice big 12-inch tortilla. Gotta love that. Looking nice and puffy. Ooh, little stickage. Love it. We're about 8 hours into this cook in total. I've mopped this several times since I seen you last. And this picnic butt is looking beautiful. Let's flip it over and see if that skin got nice and crispy. Oh, it's feeling so tender. Woohoo! Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. A little toasty, but I'm all right with it. Sounds crispy. So I'm gonna pull this off and let this rest. Oh God, I hope it doesn't fall apart. Snack for Papa. All right, folks, after a little rest, it's been about 30 minutes. I should definitely let this rest longer, but we got a lot of work to do. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this pork right about now. I'm just gonna dive right on in. Ooh, looking nice and tender. Get that bone out of there, don't need that. Oh my God, the smell of this is just phenomenal. Beautiful texture on that, pulling apart very easily, but still got some good texture to it. Just looking for bones. Don't need that. I'm gonna call this video Whole Hog Crunch Wrap, and it's clearly not a whole hog, but the picnic ham is really the best cut for that whole hog experience because we get these different textures, you know? Some of the stuff is real stringy, looking like belly meat, and other parts are kind of chunky, looking like loin meat. But most importantly, it's the style of cooking, not necessarily the cut. So tender. And most importantly, we get that crispy skin and that mop sauce and everything that whole hog is known for. So lay off me in the comments about this only being one part of the hog. But just going down all the way to the bottom, scraping the skin. And like I said, this is not my prettiest skin, but it is most certainly nice and crispy. Even after all that salt, the skin is not too salty. Pretty incredible. Ooh. So good. And to make sure we don't waste anything, we'll go ahead and add the rest of our mop sauce at this point. Yep, that's just pure flavor right there. And that is looking just perfect. I think it's time to make a crunch wrap. Big, oh beautiful, bacon fat flour tortilla. I'm gonna go down with a nice mound of our beautiful pulled pork. Crunch up some of this crispy skin. Sounding nice and crunchy. Oops. That is a true crunch wrap. Because pork crackling is way more crunchy than a little tostada, I tell you what. Next up, we're gonna go down with some freshly shredded Oaxaca cheese, because that just sounds amazing. Oops, is that too much cheese? I don't think so. On top of that, we're gonna go down with some of our beautiful coleslaw. On top of that, we'll go down with some of our pico. Top that with a little bit of Texas Pete hot sauce, don't mind if I do. And for good measure, a little cotija cheese. Now tell me that doesn't look like a pile of beautiful goodness. On top of that, we got the world's thinnest flour tortilla. Boop. And now all we need to do is roll this up. Beautiful. And there we go. Let's make a few more. Mound of pulled pork. Little bit of crispy skin. Ooh. Oops. All right, folks, we got these crunch wraps all folded up, looking beautiful. So now it's just time to sear them off on the old Chud press here. Ooh, love that sizzle. Give them a nice little press. Flatten them out a little bit. Ooh, beautiful toast on that. Nicely toasted. All right, folks, we got 3 beautiful looking whole hog crunch wraps ready to go. And let's just go ahead and get a little cross section, shall we? And there it is in all its glory. Some crispy skin, some pulled pork cooked on direct heat, freshly made bacon, fat, flour tortillas, some coleslaw, pico. I am ready to dive into this because really, it's not that much different than your average whole hog sandwich, but just wrapped up in some beautiful bacon fat tortillas. So let's dive on in. All right, y'all, I've been waiting for this moment ever since I made my very first crunch wrap. And whenever I'm thinking about a crunch wrap, what has the ultimate crunch in barbecue other than that direct heat pork skin? Yeah, it's time. Oh my God. Yep. It's so meaty. It's so toasty. You got a bunch of freshness in there from the coleslaw and the pico that really counterbalances that fatty pork and that crunchy skin, and that tortilla you know is good. It just makes sense. Crunch comes through. That is a flavor bomb. Cannot beat that direct heat, I tell you what. That's so good. And you know, I know the crunch wrap is kind of a gimmicky fast food thing, but it really makes sense, you know? It holds so much meat in there, so much goodness, and it stays together. That is hefty. I need to find some people to help me eat these. We've got some whole hog crunch wraps.
There's a whole hog in there?
No, it's not whole hog, but it's whole hog style. I'll join ya.
Uh-oh.
Very porky.
I like the pico with it. This is good. Way better than Taco Bell. Can I say that?
I'd prefer you say that, yeah. If I made something that... Ooh, got a cheese pull going. Look at it.
The pork is delicious.
You gotta love that direct heat flavor, right?
It's almost like a Cubano. Is that what we would call it?
Actually, that is pretty accurate because there's a lot of acidity that would make up for the pickles. Is that Oaxaca that would kind of replace the Swiss,
Swiss, yeah.
Cubano crunch wrap.
Cubano idea.
I mean, it would just be this, but sub pickles for slaw. Actually, it would be a whole mojo thing. Coming up!
It's like a solid 4 pounds. Oh, she's ready.
Look how ready she is.
Come on, Pee-Pee.
Oh.
Oh, good goodness.
She's gonna do it.
Oh, no, once she realizes that she can put her hands up here. All right, y'all, and that is it. That is how to make some absolutely fantastic whole hog-esque crunch wrap supremes. I highly recommend giving this one a try. And again, you don't have to go into as much detail as I did. You can easily go pick up some big tortillas, throw on some homemade pulled pork with some chicharrones on top and a coleslaw and call it a day. But like most of these big old journeys I go on, after all the hard work, it really is worth it to make a really good bite. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I'd love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace!